We expect by Memorial Day it'll pass in the House, and then it'll go on to the Senate and hopefully be there by the 4th of July. And literally everybody thinks that could happen. There's not a lot of disagreement left in either the House or the Senate. And so we're super optimistic that this is going to be probably not only the biggest tax bill ever.
Real quick on where the revenue comes from. The president said that he's willing to raise taxes on the highest earners to pay for the no tax on tips, etc. Is that in the plans?
No, it's not in the plan right now, but the president is clear that he's got the objectives that he wants to achieve for the American worker, like no tax on overtime. That no tax on overtime, by the way, it's a huge benefit.
National Economic Council Director Kevin Hassett providing an update on President Trump's big, beautiful Bill de Maria on Sunday Morning Futures yesterday. Hassett says that raising taxes on millionaires to pay for Trump's lower and middle income tax cuts is not part of the plan. However, some in Congress are not giving up on this idea. Freedom Caucus Chairman Andy Harris standing by his 40% tax bracket for millionaires with a new post on X. Meanwhile, House Energy Committee releasing its portion of the reconciliation legislation late last night. That bill cuts from Medicaid and adds work requirements and more frequent eligibility checks. Committee Chair Brett Guthrie out with a new op-ed warning Democrats will try to misrepresent the bill as an attack on Medicaid. Joining me now is West Virginia Congressman Riley Moore. He's a member of the House Appropriations Committee. And Congressman, within this op-ed from Brett Guthrie, he says, my committee's legislation supports U.S. innovation. It strengthens Medicaid, and it ends Green New Deal style waste. Your reaction? Do you agree with that?
Cheryl, thanks for having me on. Yes, I completely agree with that. And the work that Chairman Guthrie and the members of the Energy and Commerce Committee has done is actually really tremendous. And we're looking at over $900 billion savings coming out of that committee. $900 billion. That is a huge number. Obviously, we had heard the $880 billion target. They have exceeded that. $900 billion plus in terms of the cuts. And there is no reduction in terms of the FMAP across the board on this. There's no per capita cuts on this. There will be an FMAP adjustment for states that are providing Medicaid to illegal immigrants. That's one part of this, but I think that makes sense since they shouldn't even be doing that to begin with anyway. These are entitlement programs that are for U.S. citizens, not people that are residing illegally in the United States. So hats off to Chairman Guthrie and the rest of the E&C members. They did a wonderful job on this.
Well, Catherine Rempel, not surprisingly, in the Washington Post writes this, Republicans' big, beautiful predicament. And this is where it comes to the millionaires tax in particular. House Republicans have given themselves a set of mutually exclusive constraints for their tax and budget bill. They want to cut taxes, especially for the rich and for corporations, which is, I don't agree with that statement. But she says they want to reduce the deficit, which is at odds with tax cuts. Tax cuts cost money. So if we're going to extend the 2017 tax cuts, if you are saying that you don't support a millionaire's tax, and I know that's a big hot button issue right now, you've got the SALT caucus. They're not happy with what they've been offered at $30,000 for that cut. I mean, at some point, there's going to have to be some hard decisions made on where to cut spending.
No, that's right. And look, all these options are currently on the table, right? They're being debated. The committee is going to go through its process. Our chairman, Jason Smith of the Ways and Means Committee, has done a tremendous job working through this. This is one of the biggest and hardest pieces of reconciliation. And so everything, though, is coming together. And first of all, the Washington Post is, as I've said many times, just a liberal rag that's just full of fake news. I don't really care what they say. What we're saying inside the Republican conference is that we are going to get this done. The president's agenda is going to be executed, and we are going to get ourselves back on track as it relates to the debt and deficit in this country. And we are going to extend, as you've seen in the shell for the Ways and Means Committee bill that was put out, we're going to extend these tax cuts permanently. But all these things are on the table right now as they're being discussed. And obviously there's growth numbers built into that, which obviously the Washington Post wouldn't understand economic growth if it hit them. But that's okay. We understand it. And that's part of what's part of this bill as it relates to tax cuts and growth. So all of these things are on the table. They're all being discussed right now. Obviously, the SALT reduction was rejected by the New York delegation. and they're going back to the drawing board. They're going to continue to get through this. This is the sausage-making process of this, but we are going to get there. We've been doubted at every turn on this, and Speaker Mike Johnson and President Trump and Leader Thune have been able to move this thing forward, but I have total confidence in our leadership in the House that we're going to be successful.
Well, but again, there is a lot of different voices, and there's some hard no's. And I want to pick up on SALT again with you, because House Ways and Means Committee, they're expected to meet tomorrow to debate the tax cuts portion of the big bill. They released part of it on Friday, but nothing on SALT was included. And then you've got these 4 New York Republicans. They're coming out against Speaker Johnson's proposed $30,000 cap, which I mentioned earlier, on that SALT deduction. They say it's insulting and that it risks derailing the bill. They write New Yorkers already send far more to Washington than we get back. A higher SALT cap isn't a luxury. It's a matter of fairness. New York Congresswoman Claudia Tenney was with Maria on Sunday Morning Futures. Watch this.
I'm a New Yorker. I'm not in the SALT caucus. 3 to 5% of my constituents probably, itemize, which would be the way to look at this. But it's a very reasonable cap that's what we're looking at. It's a little more complex than what was revealed by some of those who are objecting to it. But Maria, 98% roughly in all these so-called SALT districts are getting a benefit for their taxpayers. 98% of their taxpayers are getting a benefit. That's what really, this is supposed to be protecting the middle class. SALT is about state and local tax deductions for the wealthy.
Congressman?
Yeah, look, here in West Virginia, I tell you, I'm not a fan of subsidizing the tax cuts for folks in New York and California and other states that are obviously very poorly run. But we are here at the table negotiating, as is everybody. We're made up of different factions, and we all have different interests and equities as it relates to our states and our constituency. But I do believe that we're going to end up coming together in the end, and we're going to find a solution for this. So obviously they didn't like the initial proposal. That doesn't mean this is over. It means that the negotiations are going to continue, and we are going to find a solution and a resolution to this and move forward on extending these tax cuts permanently for the American people.
All right, Congressman, we are going to be watching, all eyes on the House right now. Congressman Riley Moore, thank you.
Thanks so much.